the wand chooses the wizard.
Kalinsky as a commodity, like its weight value, it's nearly on par with gold.
That's mad though, isn't it?
That cost over time, like it will pay for itself. It will actually become cheaper over time.
The size of the brush head doesn't determine the execution, it's the actual use of it. The truth about brushes in general really is.
We've like swapped hats. You're normally
Swapped hats. I don't have a hat on.
No, yeah. Well, you're normally wearing a hat. And I'm normally not wearing a hat.
True. Yeah, but I've had a haircut instead. So now I
There you
have to wear a hat.
This is like your third personality like crisis on the podcast.
What?
It's not crisis.
What? Just because he decided not to wear a hat?
No, it's not a crisis. That's just my yearly. The listeners just haven't seen me for a full year.
It's a
yet.
cycle.
This is just what happens.
It's a
throughout
cycle.
a year,
Like different seasons of Joe.
Yeah, so
Seasons
the
of
hair
Joe.
goes shorter. Then, so I did switch it up a little bit. Normally the hair goes shorter, then blonde, then fully grows out, then shorter again.
Right.
But I was kind of already like longish hair when it went blonde this time. So I did mix it up a little bit. But yeah, back to shorter. Oh, it's still a little bit long. It's not like I've buzzed it off, is it?
And no hat.
And no hat because
Yeah.
it's shorter.
There you go.
So.
All right. I wasn't planning on starting the episode that way, but I think we will now.
You can keep it in there if you
Keep
want.
that
Give
in
the
it,
listeners a little update. I'm like, well, you calling me out for having a crisis.
Yeah.
James, Mordians.
Mordians, yeah. Had a lot of fun recently. What guard army would not be complete without loads of steel boxes? I have gone down the rabbit hole that is the multitude of variants of Lehman Russ. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun putting together a lot of tanks for Mordian. So I've got quite a few on the go at the minute. But I finished one up. I had a really cathartic experience that I wanted to share, which I really enjoyed. I tried to find one of the cheapest beaten up like Lehman Russ tanks on eBay that I could find. Think of it like when you're buying your son or daughter a car, their first car, you don't go and buy like a brand new car, you go buy like a banger. Yeah. This was very much like looking for a banger Russ. And then I tried to in exhibits.
All his Mordians are going to show up in like an old Corsa. Like,
Yeah,
smashed
with
wheel
neons on the sides and spinners. Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, in true exhibit pimp my ride fashion, I've spent some time fixing up a battered Russ. It was a really fun experience actually. Like we're so used to and privileged to have like brand new kits and like really like pristine sculpts and all the new models that are out over the last couple of years or so. And I specifically wanted old Mark 1 Russ tanks for my Mordians, just because obviously they're really old Mordians. So having like new Russes with old models, I just doesn't sit quite right with me. So I was like, I definitely want to use the original turret shape and the original sort of Russes for the army, just to keep that continuity of age of model in the army or as much as possible. So I found an absolute banger of a Lehman Russ on eBay. Banger in not in a good way. It was pretty haggard.
I was going to say, yeah, the times have moved. That sounds like you found a really good Lehman Russ.
Yeah. I wanted to caveat that just to be clear that it was not a good banger. Yeah.
I think in vehicle speak, banger still means bad.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're talking about a model, not
Yeah.
a real vehicle.
Yeah,
So
and you can
it's
say
a banger of a.
you can
if
say
it's
that's
a banger of a
model,
Russ. It's
yeah.
a banger of a Russ.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time cleaning it, fixing it. It had loads of mold lines and spruce burrs and bits of spruce stuck to it still and all that kind of stuff. Completely re-drive wheeled it, as in put all the new running wheels on the inside of the tracks. Completely retracked it.
He's talking about like it's a real vehicle.
Yeah,
that he's
well,
been
it is.
working on over the weekend.
Well, it is. Yeah, completely retracked it.
You know they sell Lehman Russ kits. Like you could have just cut the middleman.
It was
and just
really.
built a new
I'll tell you
one.
what. It was really cathartic taking something that was not in a good way and getting it to a point where it's ready for painting. It was really cathartic.
Put any like new leather seats in there?
No,
or-
no leather seats.
Or fake leather. Sorry,
no fake
leather
no
seat.
fake
Underglow
leather seats.
lighting.
No,
Nice subwoofer in the back.
no, none of that. No, I'm not one of those that puts like explosion noises coming from their tank or like tank noises.
Yeah,
no.
LEDs.
No LEDs. No, none of that.
Have you seen
stuff.
people that take those kits and they'll turn them into like remote control?
Remote
vehicles?
control
Yeah,
cars.
Nuts.
Yeah.
So
no,
impressive.
I will not be going that far. But no, and then just added on a lot of bits. What I've tried to do is really make them look real world by adding stuff that's like on real military vehicles like ERA or explosive reactive armor. and other bits and bobs onto the tank, just like handles, how people would climb up onto the back of the tank or a ladder on the side, and just really put a lot of stuff into it. It didn't come with a mantlet, which is the protective armor paneling just at the base of the barrel to protect like from frontal shots.
Just on your last point, it's interesting that kit is probably one of the few Warhammer kits that almost looks like a scale model, if you get what I mean.
I think a lot of the Forge World ones do. Like if you think of a Malcador, if you think of things like that, they are.
I guess I meant like guard stuff in general, but like it's with what you're doing as well. It kind of like treads on the fringes of like if you could almost imagine if it was painted in like a different style. It would
very much so. Yeah, I think that's the good thing about Guard is I think Guard are like probably one of the most obvious factions that you can take a lot of real life emphasis and put it across the models. Like they couldn't really do it with Tyranids, could you? Let's be honest. But
well, you say that, but you can because you can look at like I know. Reptiles and things like that. I think the thing with the like Guard stuff though is that you immediately lose out the second you look at like the guns or something. Yeah. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's sci-fi.
Yeah,
that's straight away.
Yeah, but no, I've just been trying to use a lot of real world kind of reference for the tanks. And yeah, just getting ready for painting. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been good. That's my hobby for the week.
Joe, hobby for the week?
I've been building stuff as well. Actually, mine was newish kits though, not relics, and not much converting. Well, no converting at all. Just building. Basically, I played Underworlds on Saturday with Barrett, friend of the show, listener, previous painter for the company.
Yeah.
We played a couple of games of Underworlds for like the second or third time, and it just sort of clicked. You know, when you're learning a new game, in the first couple of times you're kind of a bit overwhelmed, like you don't really know what's going on, and then the second time maybe it's been a few weeks, or in this case it'd been like a couple of months. But it just clicked, like we really enjoyed it. So as soon as I got home, I was like, I need to build every single one of my warbands that I've sat on the shelf. So
how many did you build, Joe?
I've built 5 warbands.
5 war bands, not 5 models.
Not 5 models, 5 warbands. So 5.
That's a lot of models. Then.
Half an army.
So
nearly.
5. Well, they're 4 to 5 models each. So it's not loads and loads of models.
I feel like you've undersold actually how much you've done.
And they are. So I've done 5. Mate, I've been bitten. I got the bug. As soon as I got, like, I was like, I need to build every one that I have so that I can now like choose what ones to play with next time and so on. I'm gonna paint them. I'm gonna paint them as well.
Well, we've heard that before.
Don't know when, but yeah, very good. And they're just, mate, the model. We've said it so many times. The models are so cool.
Yeah, they are good.
Like the models are actually. Actually, I've got another warband on the way because we bought the new.
Newsflash.
We split the new box, the Death Gorge box.
Did yeah?
We split that. So
who's we?
Me and Barrett.
Oh right, okay.
So
so you going Slanesh or are you going?
I'm going for the Slanesh ones, yeah. And Barrett's taking the IDNF Deepkin ones. So I went for the one with the lower model count.
I mean, you got 25 already. So
I've got plenty to paint already. Yeah. So good. Like when I actually do start painting them, I guess I'll put pictures up on Instagram and stuff. But enjoying it.
Fair.
Enjoying it. I think did you buy a team? You bought a warband, didn't you?
No, I keep on saying I'm going to. I keep on intending on buying the starter box, and then inevitably some other project finds itself on my desk. So
2 words: Crimson Court. Just do it. Just do it.
I don't think you can get them.
You can't get the rules for them. Actually, funny enough,
no, you can get them.
You can't. The models don't come with the.
They come with cards.
I thought they didn't come with them. I thought it was for Warcry because they're like a hybrid.
I think they have an actual Underworlds box which should come with a.
I don't think they do that one anymore. I think they just.
It's not for sale. You have to find it.
You can still find it. Yeah.
I have to have a hunt around. Cool box. That is a cool box.
There's some cool ones just still available. Like, so I've got a few. If you want to,
just going to try and get you bitten.
We should definitely like. It's quick and easy.
I will gladly paint up the Crimson Court I've got.
We'll play them, mate. Let's paint them. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Can we stop this now?
Stop recording.
Can we stop this now so we can have a game? Yeah. So I'm going to expect me to do a bit of a James and basically bend every I'm going to bend every painting challenge. I'm going to bend the rules to try and fit my Underworlds stuff into it. This one's pretty easy because it's chaos.
Right.
So I've got Slaves to Darkness warband.
Oh, you're
That's
going
what's
to
getting
integrate all of
painted.
them with the calendar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
I'm starting to work it out. I'm going to struggle with March from the Crag, I think. There's not really any way for me to do that. So that's fine.
You could paint them in McCrag blue.
I could, yeah. I could do some McCrag blue.
And that is stretching March from
See,
McCrag.
James is better at it than me. I'm not used to bending the rules like that. James has come up with a killer way just then.
We are on the second month.
Yeah.
And you're joining him in bending the rules now.
Yeah, because I just thought, like, if you can't beat them, join them. You know what I mean? Like,
Brilliant.
you might as well just go for it.
So I'm just going to be the one chump on this podcast
I also
left, like, actually painting with the
I
listeners.
also want to
No,
encourage the listeners to bend the rules as well.
Basically, we want you to paint stuff as much
Yeah.
as possible. So
Yeah.
however you need to bend
We
the
should have
rules.
changed the painting calendar to just paint stuff. Like,
Paint stuff.
January.
No, because the fun is in bending the rules to see how you can get them into the thing.
True. Yeah. And then April's pretty easy because that's just add to your army.
mm-hmm.
So I'll just, whatever warband I want to paint, I'll just lie and say that I'm going to do an army of them. So that's fine. That'll be fine for April. Then March was, after April, May was, Adeptus Mechanicus. That's going to be a struggle.
If you put some cogs on the bases. See,
This is ridiculous.
I was going to ask James how to do it.
See,
I'll tell you what, though, all jokes aside, why there isn't a 40k equivalent of Underworlds as in the gaming system and the
that
release
is
schedule and
a puzzle.
everything, I have no idea because it is.
Because you've got like Warcry and Kill Team.
Warcry
seem like an
and Kill
equivalent.
Team are the equivalent. There's no Underworlds equivalent for 40k, and having Underworlds in a 40k setting would be very cool. I
Yeah.
guess it.
and I think it would probably be. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, Age of Sigmar is popular, but I think if you did it with 40k models, I think it would be way more popular.
Yeah, I think that potentially they see Necromunda as the equivalent, even though the game system's
But
completely
it's, the
different.
thing is, it's not though, because you get vehicles and it's
There's
more,
no deck building though, is there? There's no cards in.
No, not
No,
in Necromunda.
I'm saying the game system's completely different, but I think because of the focus the focus of Underworlds is these like going in little dingy caves and stuff. So they
I've
see that.
I've got an amazing idea. You could literally set it as sort of different parties going onto a Space Hulk. You could do it that way.
Well, every season is a different setting.
Yeah.
So, but you can go crazy with it. Like that, a 40k equivalent.
You said parties. I'm just imagining like a space marine with one of those little cone hats on.
Doing a conga onto the space ship.
That's it. One of those things that comes out your mouth when you blow it. Yeah.
Why there isn't one, I have no idea. They would sell every kit out.
Yeah.
Imagine if there was like just every now and then this little box of 5 unique Space Marines or whatever, 5 unique Gene Stealers. Like every single.
I mean,
one would
obviously,
sell
I'm
out.
speculating, but I would imagine that GW's answer to it is, well, Kill Team exists. Like,
Yeah, but then Warcry exists as well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, and it's weird to me that out of all of the settings, Age of Sigmar is the one that has the unique game system.
yeah, strange. Very strange.
Yeah, but it's so good. So both get on a team.
You have to give me like an intro game or something in the office, then maybe we'll.
You could play it on lunch easy.
Oh yeah, once you get like that was the biggest surprise to me was like on Saturday we got through like quite like a couple of games. It went in a time that I thought we was only going to get through one because I thought we were going to be stopping, reading the rules, but because we'd played it literally once or twice previously, revisiting it was actually really easy. Like it hadn't all disappeared. It was like as soon as I was reading something, I was like, oh yeah, and this. So yeah, that's been a lot of my hobby taken up over the weekend.
Fair enough.
What about you?
We had the little Dark Angels, Blood Angels feud last
We did.
week. So the conclusion of that conversation was paint a Blood Angels test model.
Yeah.
And I did paint a Blood Angels test model.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it on screen for the listeners now.
Oh yeah.
It's Jewel of the Fates. So I am still somewhat undecided. Oh my God. On the basis of,
I'm convinced you just-
I'm going to say it now. Like
No,
if you look at the Marines on the screen now, if I'm correct in my thinking, the Dark Angel is looking at his screen and almost going like this. Even he can tell that the guy's power reading is 9,000. He's like, wow, look at that Blood Angel. So, even the Dark Angel is like...
I'm convinced that the answer's been obvious from literally the first 30 seconds of the conversation last time. So I think George is just loving the attention personally.
Right, let me give the explainer. So I painted the Blood Angel, and I didn't tell you to, but in my head, I'm afraid to announce that I did conclude I wanted to do Blood Angels after painting that model.
Okay.
However, we did also speak about doing a custom chapter. Yep. And I was like, I've got a brilliant idea. I'm going to do like a hybrid of the two. So I was going to paint a third test model quietly of like a split color scheme, like quarter scheme, kind of like what we spoke about in the last episode. And I was going to call them Angels of Death. I was going to like get really into it. Yeah. So I started painting one as a test model. I hated it. I hated how the colors looked together.
Yeah,
I was
red and
so
green,
disappointed.
Christmas marine.
Red and green together just wouldn't look that. I know, like color theory, color wheel, whatever.
Yeah.
But on a marine in a split scheme, I don't think that would look great.
I half knew that going in, but I was like, maybe, like, maybe
Did you paint a lid on its own?
No, I like literally done like a whole model.
Oh, okay.
I didn't finish it, but I started painting one. I base coated it, and I'd done all the recess shading. I started going to highlight it, and I literally got like halfway through, and I was like, I'm not even going to finish it. I hated it.
I need to see a photo of this, because I want to see it. But yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's bizarre. If you choose Blood Angels, absolutely bizarre.
Well, point is, I'd done that. I had all my eggs in that basket. I was really excited to do the custom scheme, and it sucked. So I'm really disappointed. So I'm going to jadedly pick Blood Angels.
Welcome.
Enjoy your old rubbish models. Watching all the lovely new Dark Angels.
Don't worry, George.
Come out.
Keep the faith. When the new ones come out.
By the way, like, tried to put like a little poll thing up on the comments on Instagram, which I think you both assumed would be swayed towards Blood Angels.
I actually didn't know. I didn't.
Dark Angels won.
They didn't.
Dark Angels won.
You should check. I think you should check.
Dark Angels won.
You should check the
figures.
figures.
The screenshot up. Dark Angels won. When you finalise the screenshot and you put it in, Dark Angels had won.
I'm gonna stipulate this, right? Because I told my girlfriend about this conversation, and she wanted me to do Dark Angels, and she went on all of her Instagram accounts because she's got like 3 or 4 of them, but she went on every single one.
Oh, what? You don't think James has got about 10 that he voted the Blood Angels?
I might have done that as well. Let's be honest.
Ridiculous. We even had Blood Angels fans commenting saying, "Yeah, definitely choose Dark Angels because the new models are so."
Do you know what it is? It's because they didn't think that George would fully commit to it, and I'm so glad that you did, George, with the black trims.
Are you doing the black trims as well?
I've done the black trims to keep him happy. I'm undecided. But right, this is the worst part about doing.
Is
the
this
Blood
what
Angels.
you want your passion project to be? Just keeping James happy. That's why that's why you've chosen Blood Angels.
Look, I'm look. Either
Whatever
way,
you want, mate.
Either way,
on,
I'm happy because it means that I've got someone else to talk to about painting Blood Angels when I start my army this year.
You are on thin ice. If you start coming after me for like how I'm doing like the transfers.
I was gonna say.
Look, that thin ice will be gone when you start raiding the Blood Angels bits box, mate. That's all I'm going to say.
All I'll say is enjoy painting your Blood Angels army.
He did. That's why he chose them.
Enjoy all the conversations you're going to have with James about it and all the critique you're going to get that you didn't ask for. Enjoy every minute of it.
I solemnly swear to not critique and just let you get on with it. Because the thing is whatever, if there's something that I'm like, oh, I'll do that different, I'll just do it on my ones and that's it. So there you go.
Cut to that. Play him that clip in like 3 months.
Welcome to the Blood. There you go.
Oh, disgusting, mate. Absolutely disgusting.
Great choice, George.
Yeah,
well
I do look at you a bit differently now.
Excuse me, when he joined this company, he joined as a Blood Angel fan, so he's not really going away.
Yeah, but no, everyone, a little bit of inside baseball, I suppose, for everyone, but everyone who applies pretends to be a Blood Angel. We know this.
By the way,
if you're planning on doing that, we know when you're lying.
That is no easy entry.
Lying.
Yeah.
George was lying. Everyone who applies to be a painter pretends to be a Blood Angel fan just to please James.
That is in part why I picked the Blood Angels, was because when I first started painting Warhammer, I'd done Blood Angels and I really, really liked them, and I'd never done an army of them, so I feel like I owe it to myself.
See, nostalgia.
No, I hope
you had nostalgia for like 3 years ago.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, the old days.
Yeah,
the old days.
Back when I was young.
Yeah. Well, I hope you don't. I sincerely hope you don't regret it. That's 100%
the venom.
Sincerity. Sincerity for me. That's
I'm going to be thinking about like that soundbite of you when I go home and my house is on fire. Like,
yeah.
Look, even the Dark Angel is looking at the Blood Angel going, oh my God, he looks amazing. So, you know, there you go.
Both of the models do look
Yeah,
great.
they both look sick.
The
So,
Blood Angels too. Yeah. The Blood Angel does look really good.
and I'd just like to say, I've never ever said I don't like Dark Angels. I do. I just like Blood Angels more.
Yeah.
So
I don't like Blood Angels.
Just a quick one. We wanted to remind you that you can get your own miniatures painted by the world-class team here at Siege Studios. We offer a variety of painting levels and services to meet your needs and budget. Whether you want a centerpiece character or an entire gaming army, we offer well above the industry standard of quality and experience. You can learn more about our services and get a quote now at siegestudios.co.uk. And just for you podcast listeners, you can get 5% off of your first commission using the code PAINT5. Back to the show. Should we do the listeners' comments?
let's do it.
Geek English says, just want to throw my hat into the ring with Blood Angels versus Dark Angels. White scars forever. Same colour across the army. Primarch to return, and the chapter had traitors in the Horus Heresy and just got rid of them instantly instead of spending 10,000 years crying about it while keeping a secret. Motorbikes, baby.
I saw this guy and I actually thought, yeah, fair play. White scars are, number one, very cool. Number two, not really spoken about enough.
No, I love White Scars. The thing is like in the Heresy books, Jagatai, he's obviously more prominent in some of the later books, but early on when there's a scene where they're all on the balcony discussing like, all the Primarchs, Jagatai's just like completely quiet, doesn't hardly say anything at all whatsoever. I would love, and I'm going to say this now, I would love Jagatai to be the next Primarch to come back in 40k and just be like, it's a total curveball for him to come back because I think he's an amazing Primarch.
That's the point. You're not going to get a Primarch to paint.
Sanguinor, mate, don't worry.
Yeah, you're not going to get a Primarch to paint. Thingy.
Hot take here. I'm not fussed about Primarchs, being honest.
But it's like as close as you get from a painting perspective. It's as close as you get to like a centerpiece model of your Space Marines.
Thing is, hopefully, fingers crossed.
That's the reason that you know, I get people look forward to the lore implications of it, but I mean, from a painting point of view, it's like that is the centerpiece model for any Space Marine.
I guess I'm just not that fussed about my centerpiece being like a specific character rather than just
I
make it.
Having
Do
a
you know
good
what I mean?
army, yeah. I think the thing is like there are lots of characters, or the Sanguinor being one of them, and he could easily be made into a centerpiece model because that's what he kind of is. You know, he's a bit of a mythical character for the Blood Angels, but yeah, like things
sort of a 2-bit version of the 2-bob version.
At least he hasn't been sleeping for 10,000 years. There you go. So, so yeah, but yeah, no, fingers crossed. But
Sanguinius been sleeping for longer than
that. His soul's still alive, mate. Don't worry. Yeah, but yeah,
but White Scars are great,
and bikes, as he said.
You just don't really see many people like.
I would
crazy about.
I would
them.
love White Scars to get like a full upgrade, like with their own kit and like specific. Like I know they've got the upgrade pack and stuff, but like the similar sort of treatment to sort of how Dark Angels and other sort of chapters are going to get.
What would you say? So obviously you have Ultramarines, Blood Angels, and Dark Angels as like
and Space Wolves probably as
the
well.
three. Yeah. So what I was going to say was they're the three that seem to get the best treatment, if you like.
Space Wolves do as well.
Is Space Wolves next? Is that the next one that gets the biggest sort of? I don't know, the biggest love from GW.
I think that those four have always been big four. Yeah, they've always have been. But yeah, I would love them to do. I mean, having said that, like Black Templars.
I was gonna say, yeah, Black Templars got a lot of love.
Yeah, they've got loads, which is great. So yeah,
I wouldn't have put them in like the top ranking prior to that update.
Exactly, they still got their own codex back in the day. They still got their own individual codex.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say there was like one of GW's like favorite factions.
Because also, yeah, when you look at the models that they got. Like if White Scars got that kind of model release now, it would be like a big thing.
Yeah.
I think you got to think like the popularity of like each legion in Heresy getting loads of bespoke stuff. I think that if that comes into 40k with a lot of chapters, I think that would be at least for quite a few of the first founding potentially. Then I think that it will just add a lot of more interest for different chapters. Like again, I think a massively underrated. Sorry, we're going off on a tangent, but I think a massively underrated is Crimson Fists. I think Crimson Fists are amazing when you read them.
Crimson Fists get a lot of love as well, like online.
I think the Crimson Fist was my first like. From my point of view, they seem like the cooler like. Almost hipstery pick of a Space Marine Legion. Do you know what I mean? Like that was like the the sort of, it was, I guess because they're not first founding, so it feels a bit more like an obscure pit.
Well, the thing is that back from Road Trader, they were the chapter on the Road Trader cover.
Yeah.
Like, and the 3rd edition Marine decks, that famous scene where they're all like Last Stand, where they've got these, like they recreated it. Like, it's like they've always been a prominent chapter, but it's just a shame that they haven't got the love that obviously other chapters have got. I don't
even think they have like their own category on the website.
No.
Crimson Fists.
Well,
they used to have a named character or two, didn't
Captain Cortez. Captain Cortez. Pedro Cantor.
Yeah, they had the Finecast one, didn't
they? Had a character before him called Cortez, just a captain. That got its own model, which was quite cool.
Yeah, but White Scar's a good shout for anyone who's
Likes.
Anyone who's been put off of both Dark Angels and Blood Angels by our argument.
I saw another comment. I didn't put it for this. I'll put it up on screen though. Someone said about White Scars as well. And I was like, the best part is it's all white. And then they was going on about how you're just going to be painting a lot of white. And then I was like, oh, actually, on second thought, maybe just do Raven Guard. It's a lot of white to paint. Rim40k says, thank you, George. I've been hunting for the perfect dropper bottle after many trial and errors. I now have Vallejo 70095. I just want to thank the rest of the team for some great tips and advice. Highlights being wet palette prep, no TK Maxx for me.
Sad times.
And learning better brush control by not trying to do everything in sub-assemblies. Right, bone to pick with Vallejo, right? I gave him a massive shout out, telling everyone I've been using these dropper bottles for the last couple of years. They've stopped making them. I can't find them. I've now run out of dropper bottles and I can't get them.
Everyone's gone and bought them, that's why.
Reveal your secret, lose your supply chain. So yeah.
I've hunted so many like random like small hobby store websites in like other countries. And sometimes this is the one gripe that I've always had with these. And this, to be fair, isn't just a new thing. People will say that that's what they are, and then what they send you is just a generic like 15 mil.
You get
dropper.
that a lot on like Amazon and stuff, for example.
So
you're gonna have to get
if you hook me up with your supplier, because I haven't got any.
Have to get recycling, George.
I did see this name when I asked you to read this one out.
Special Meats says, on the topic of motivation and stress, are any of y'all neurodivergent? I'm autistic and have ADHD, and I feel like my brain is on a downright demotivational zone. I'll be excited to paint a new model or a miniature, sit down, and my brain will actually yell at me, what are you doing? You can't do that right now. I have to practically argue with myself that nothing is stopping me from doing it, and I'll lose the argument most of the time. I enjoy painting and have the time to do it, but even on days when I feel like painting, I often can't, and I don't know how to get past this.
Yeah, so, I mean, not to talk for either of you, I don't really know, but I'm not neurodivergent, or haven't had any. I definitely share some traits. Like it's crossed my mind over the years, but I've never had anything kind of diagnosed like that. But I've experienced this exact thing that's been explained in this comment a lot, and I think this goes with, you know, like the thing where I was explaining, like sometimes you just have to wait it out, and it lines up. And it's kind of what happened to me recently, which is where I let myself not paint for a while, and I got used to being okay with letting myself not paint for a while. And then it's this really specific piece of timing that has to happen where it was like three things had to line up, which is I wanted to paint in that moment, I had the time to paint in that moment, and I felt like I could actually focus on painting in that moment. And quite often, like two of those things would happen, but the third one would just stop me painting. Or like the comment explained, I'd sit down to paint, and then after like 30 seconds, I'd be thinking, oh, I should be doing this instead. Or, oh, you're going to mess it up anyway, so go and do something else, or whatever. So don't really have any like specific advice on dealing with, painting while you're also autistic and have ADHD and stuff. I don't know if we've got any members on the team. Maybe we can ask for some advice on that stuff, but definitely experienced that. And I think the key thing to do is to just sort of be okay with yourself that you're not going to be able to paint every single time that you want to, or something like that. As soon as you're easier on yourself with that, I think over time it will just line up.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it.
And also when you're in that process of thinking that like that, like you're not going to do your best work. So it's not the right time to be doing that. Like the person who commented mentioned that they do have, I'm assuming from reading it, that they do have days where they do paint, if that makes sense. So on those days where those thoughts come into your mind or you feel that way, just don't even worry about it. Just see it as one of those days where you're not going to paint and you're going to do something else instead, be it building, be it tidying them. Yeah,
we've gone over how like just learning some of the lore.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, I was banging on about the Underworld stuff. I started listening to Path to Glory, which is a Underworlds podcast. It's like the main one, and they kind of touch on the gaming stuff, but they touch on a lot of the lore and the settings and the actual lore that's been written for each warband and stuff like that. And instantly, like,
you fall in love with it.
I was like way more into this warband that I was about to paint or build, as it were, over the last weekend than I would have been before. So yeah, if you're not up for it or you're getting those thoughts, like maybe just take that time instead to watch some lore videos or read some of the books or something. Yeah, there's lots you can do, I think.
Yeah. We've got what must be the best iTunes review to just ever have been written ever. I'm not even just going to say for our show. I'm just thinking of all reviews.
Ever.
I saw this.
Yeah.
Painted by Jim says, 5 stars, a trio to rival Clarkson, Hammond and May. A bold claim, I hear you cry, and who are you to make such a claim? No one called Jim has ever been an authority on anything, with the possible exception of Earthworm Jim or Jim Carrey. However, if my current employer knew the hours I'd spent the past 6 months listening to painting podcasts, I would have my P45 faster than GW pre-orders sell out. So, to the review, grab a biscuit, close your known oil, and let's begin. They say mastery is 10k hours spent. What they do not tell you is 10k hours of purposeful practice. The gents are a band of brothers that will answer all of your miniature painting questions. The real ones, like, how should I really be rimming my bases? They each have a wealth of knowledge and insight to draw from and discuss and debate. Best tips and hobby hacks for your time. The real best bit that sets them apart is the engagement with the community. If a listener has a good tip or an idea, they'll take it on board and share it, enabling the knowledge to compound. Great stuff and a great listen while painting or building dentures or fixing military aircraft. A word of caution, however, you may be tempted to get a nose ring thinking it will hold some power to make you a better painter. This is still up for debate, and please check with a significant other before committing. Jim, not Earthworm or Carey.
That review is tremendous.
I mean, that's like if I asked AI to write a review for my podcast.
This is like the Chat GPT review.
Yeah, like it's perfect. Like, oh mate, so many little nuggets in there about other episodes and stuff.
It really caught me off guard with the reference to the dentures and the military aircraft. If you would like to support the show, please do leave a review over on iTunes or a rating if you're listening on Spotify. And even if you like to watch the podcast on YouTube, please do head over there and give us a rating. It really, really helps us out to bring these every week.
If you can leave one better than that, then fair play.
The bar has been set.
Yeah.
Topic for this week, brushes. Pretty important in miniature painting, turns out.
I've used them.
I've seen a few finger painters out there. So.
We wanted to talk about our favourite brushes, ways to find a good brush, what brush is right for you, what makes a good quality brush, and importantly, how to look after them and stop wasting your money. So I guess James is probably the biggest brush expert. Do we want to give a bit of a disclaimer on your background there?
I have a little bit of experience with brushes. So I was one of the owners of Artis Opus. So I founded and started Artis Opus with Byron and Greg from Element Games. Series S and Series M were kind of like my kind of babies that I really wanted to sort of bring out brushes that, number one, were sort of like more designed for sort of miniature painting.
One of the things I also wanted to add was that Siege as a company does have a working partnership with Artis Opus.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
A lot of our artists choose to use Artis Opus as well.
Mm-hmm.
We've all used Artis Opus at different points, obviously. I think now at this point, though, we do all have different brands in our...
So I actually don't anymore.
Well, there we go. So we all have different brands that we have in our collection. But yeah, Siege as a company does have a work in partnership with Artis Opus, so it's worth pointing that out, I guess.
Yeah, of
while we're
course,
talking
yeah.
about brushes.
Yeah.
That being
100%.
said, though, like you said, we all use our own different brands, and I think like kind of purpose of this conversation is the wand chooses the wizard.
I say
You know
that
what
all
I
the
mean?
time, like Harry
Yeah.
Potter. Yeah, like
Yeah.
100%. Like
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to get at, was like, it's weird. We say this about paints all the time, that don't tie yourself to one brand and buy different things to fill out your collection. I don't think people don't really tend to say that about brushes. I feel like people say use this brush and like buy the full set of this brush. You know what I mean?
I've chopped and changed quite a bit. Not necessarily. I've never really only used one brand exclusively, if you get what I mean. I find that I like different brushes for different things. And equally, there have been certain brushes that I was using for a long time, and then the quality changed, or they changed something about them. So then I went and found another brand, or I found that some were, like Raphael, for example, I found very, very difficult to get a hold of at the time that I was using them a lot. And that was a big factor in my decision in deciding to change and try out some other companies like Windsor Series 7. I can't think of the Rosemary & Co. So at the minute, I'm actually using quite a mixture of stuff. I use synthetics as well for like, obviously the tough tasks of like, glue and whatnot. I mean, I'm
exactly.
fortunate to be in a position where I've bought a lot of brushes over the years, and they sort of like work their way down the hierarchy.
Yeah.
In the sense of now, if I need like a junky brush, it's just going to be a really, really old brush that used to be a good brush.
It's kind of, I think we touched on that when we had Adam Skinner on the show.
Yeah.
And he's obviously been painting for a very long time and won all these competitions and has got through a fair few brushes himself. And he was saying that, I think the synthetic brush conversation came up then, and he was saying that he doesn't, because he just has all of his good brushes that have just worked their way down over the years, and you end up with just all good brushes all around for every different task kind of thing.
Do you know something that I find really, really interesting about this conversation is you always hear the biggest reason people don't, like, especially newer painters, don't want to get into using Kolinsky brushes is price and like fear of ruining them. But that's something that I really don't understand, because if you look at like miniature painting brushes, synthetics, they tend to be about the same price.
The cost of Kolinsky and the cost of synthetic, as synthetic is being developed to be better and better and better. Look, to go slightly off topic, global warming is affecting the supply of Kolinsky globally, like that. It just is. The environment that the specific animal that the hair is cultivated
Well,
from.
there was also the situation in Ukraine affected a lot of the supply chain as well. A lot of it comes from Siberia.
Exactly, yeah. So there's a lot of reasons as to why, but synthetics are getting better. They still aren't at a point that they compete with the quality of Kolinsky, but price point wise, because of things that are happening in the world, they are kind of leveling out a little bit. So really, there's no real massive difference in sort of shopping experience or shopping sort of spend.
It does depend on the brand, to be fair. I mean, there is also like massive scope in like the price. Like you can get Kolinsky brushes that are like £5-6. You can get Kolinsky brushes that are like £40-50.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a massive jump.
Part of that is you get into a conversation about branding and stuff like that. And I don't think it's particularly helpful for us from like the outside looking in to start picking that apart too much, because we don't necessarily know what goes into
all I would say is there's a lot of things that go into the manufacturing of brushes that warrant costings. Like I've got to say this, like Kolinsky as a commodity, like its weight value, it's nearly on par with gold, to give you a bit of an idea when you're buying Kolinsky. So the Kolinsky that you would, when you buy a big tuft or wad of Kolinsky that's been all the choice hairs for production of brushes, that wad is worth a lot of money, like for the weight that it is, comparable to gold. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't actually instinctively, they just look at it and go, it's hair, but
I guess my point is people, I don't think about the full picture when they're incorporating the cost into it. For example, that brush is going to last you a long, long time compared to a synthetic brush if it's looked after.
That is the big caveat.
When the price gap is like on the more entry level of like the Kolinsky brushes, when they're already pretty close to like a miniature branded synthetic brush, that cost over time, like it will pay for itself. It will actually become, in my opinion, cheaper over time.
Yeah.
Because that synthetic brush is going to last you like maybe a few weeks before you get a hooked tip or it doesn't quite want to get its shape back. I've got Kolinsky brushes over for like 2 or 3 years.
I think part of that, it's almost a not a myth, but like a thing that's stuck around even though it's not that true anymore, is the pricing thing between synthetics and actual Kolinsky brushes, because they did used to be a lot cheaper.
Oh, they used to be massively different. Yeah.
And I think that has just kind of stuck around as like, and also I guess because of all the Games Workshop ones are synthetic, aren't they?
So the
I'm not sure what
the
the new-
Artificer is a Kolinsky.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
It
even know
is.
what brushes they have available at the minute.
Like everything, the Artificer definitely is. The rest of them are a blend, I think. Yeah, I mean, so Kolinsky and synthetics used to be miles apart, but they have, as times pass through the world events and other things, etc. You know, the quality of synthetic has improved quite considerably. So I think that's a good summary of kind of like of like sort of like the difference between synthetics and
Just the different options,
different
that there are
options.
and stuff.
When it comes to brand, it really does come down to the things I was talking about, which is like comfort of use, performance, all those kind of things. And believe it or not, like subtle differences in head shape and head size and pack feel of hair and stuff like that do make considerable differences in the way the brush actually behaves on when you've got paint on it or on the palette. It makes a massive difference, which I think was one of the factors when sort of like designing Series S. Like, I think that was one of the things that like it was really important getting a head size that was long enough to do all the work that you'd expect to do with all the different sizes within the range, and also have enough fill of hair in each head to make it a fairly decent price point, or as best as possible, whilst also delivering the best performance. It's that classic triangle of those three things, trying to get the right balance between them.
Should we just, like, one thing to unpack there potentially then is like brush size, because I know that's sort of a big talking point as well.
Yeah.
One thing you talk about a lot is like the brush control, pressure management.
Mm-hmm.
I found a lot until like reasonably late on into painting, like even when I was already pretty competent at it, I didn't realize the benefits of using a bigger brush.
Yeah.
Like beyond reasons you might think. Do you want to like maybe just go into that a little bit?
So using, there's often that misconception of like, oh, I'm doing the eyes on a model, I have to use a tiny little 000, blah blah, like, or
it's that thing you hear a lot from like people who don't paint potentially. They're like, oh, the brushes you use for those models, they must be tiny.
Yeah. I think one of the things with that is that like, because obviously the detail is so small, the thought process would be, well, the brush has to be tiny to execute it. And really it's that the size of the brush head doesn't determine the execution, it's the actual use of it. And sorry to go on a quick off tangent, but it's like an airbrush. It's like the pressure determines obviously the result. Well, no, it's your trigger finger on the airbrush that determines the result and how much you depress and pull back, etc. It's exactly the same with the brush. So the pressure that you're applying with the brush will determine the result, and also the way that you can do things. And I think that when you start painting with a much bigger brush than you're used to, you instinctively have to become more delicate and careful, which once you start executing details and things with that tiny little, with a bigger brush, when you pick up the smaller brush, it's so much more refined because it is that much smaller, if that makes sense. And it is a smaller brush, if that makes sense. Right from the get-go, if you look at a size 6 and a 000, the absolute end of the brush, the point, is really that dissimilar, like that much when you look at it. But what the bigger brush gives you is a bigger belly behind the...
Cut to my brushes and my size 6 is just like all over the place.
I think one of the things is like the belly of the brush behind the point. The bigger the brush, the longer that brush is going to serve you, because it maintains that moisture behind the tip a lot longer, and that gives you a bit more working time with a brush. Which
when you say serve, just like you mean in the short term, like it's going to be longer physically when it's in your hand between drying out, between picking up paint on the palette.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's going to maintain that moisture in the brush head for longer. So, like for example, like I used to use a whole plethora of brushes. Many years ago, I used to use a whole plethora of brushes for doing different tasks and stuff. And it was only really when I thought to myself, right, well, if I use it, I think it was on a freak occurrence where I was like, oh, I haven't got that brush here, or I traveled away somewhere and I only had like a size 4 or size 3 or something like that. And I was like, I'm just going to do it with this brush because it's the only one I've got with me. And I found that I painted really well in that session because the brush endured for longer. And I could still execute all the things I wanted to do, sharp edges, little details, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the working time of the brush was just so much longer. And yes, you do have to get used to the control of it because it's got more flex because of the larger head, et cetera, and it does instinctively draw up more water or paint when you put it on the palette or in the water pot or whatever, blah, blah. So it does take some learning to it. The best way for me to explain it would be for any of you that drive out there is you drive your car for ages and ages and ages and ages and ages. You get in another car, it feels completely odd, but you can still drive, if that makes sense. And that's the best example for me to do. And then you acclimatize to that vehicle. And then when you get back in your car, it's like, oh, this is really weird. Do you know what I mean? So it's very similar to that. Like,
I think one thing that's interesting with the size is like, I think it's completely contextual to how you paint as well. Like, for example, I do not own a brush bigger than a size 2. I mean, dead set. I do not own a brush bigger than a size 2.
Weird.
I like to use small brushes a lot. So to me, a 2 is my massive brush.
Big brush.
but that still works. I mean, you're still doing stuff with a 2.
Also, it's worth noting that, like, I don't know what the actual technical things behind this is, but all the different brands' sizes seem to be different.
I'm so glad you said that.
So, like, a size 2 in one brand is not a size 2 in another brand.
That's very true.
What is, from someone who was involved in developing brushes, where do the sizes come from? Is it just you just decide?
You decide in the size incremental jumps between the brushes.
There's no other industry that does that. Can you imagine going to a shop and like trying to buy a t-shirt?
Or like a ring or something.
Yeah.
And like, because t-shirts and stuff, clothing, to be fair, to a certain extent, small, mediums and larges in different brands.
No, but clothing is very much like that because you go in one shop and a medium is one size.
That's what I'm saying. So yeah, like a different, like I used to work at a clothing company that was historically known for how small all the clothes were. And I was there as like a chubby 6'2" guy in like the biggest size they could do. And like, it looked like I was wearing a medium. Like it was like, clinging to my skin.
It's so very, like, very similar to
clothing is actually quite similar. Yeah.
It is. I mean, the thing is, like, look, I've lined up a lot of different manufacturers' brushes in different sizes next to each other, obviously through what I've done in the past, obviously just to see where the market is and stuff. And you'll be astounded by the difference in sizes. Like they are. It's crazy.
Yeah, I found that even just as a consumer.
Even as a consumer, you go in, you're like, I've been there. Like I went into it before. Obviously, I'd done what I'd done in the past, and when I went in to buy because I used to use Windsors all the time.
Windsors are really small.
You get a Windsor, and then you're like, oh, that's a size. And it was only recently I picked up one of my old Windsors at home, and I was using it. I was like, it's a size 2. I think it's a size 3, or something like that. And then I was like, but that feels like a size 1 or 2 in like what I usually use. Do you know what I mean?
That's definitely something for people to consider when people are talking about brushes then.
Yeah.
Oh, I used size 1 for this, or...
Do you know...
Like, sometimes people mention it in tutorials. I think we mention it on the PDF tutorials that we do. You can get on the store and Patreon and stuff. And I do think we mention the specific brush as well as the size. We don't say... I don't think we just say, I'll do a size 1.
One thing I have found is that with Kolinsky sable brushes, most manufacturers will say the size of the brush head in millimeters in both length and width.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not that that's great to work against, but the way that I would try, if I was jumping to another brand, because I've done this before like many times, if I'm going to like a brand new manufacturer, I'll compare that to the brush that I've got.
Yeah.
So I'll measure the brush that I've got and go, okay, well, this is a 7.8 millimeter brush. What's this? Oh, this says it's a 7.9. Okay, it's going to be pretty close.
But it's not just length.
That's mad though, isn't it? That you have to do that rather than just go, oh, I like using a size 2, so I'll order a size 2.
I just meant in the sense of if you are looking to try out another brush, if you aren't able to go into a store where you can find them or an art shop where they just stock a lot of options.
Order one that's that is your main dominant brush that you use. Order a comparable in that manufacturer and see whether it's bigger or smaller or the same. And I think that's what the best.
Something some companies do is they'll do like a booklet, and inside it will have like 1-to-1 size pictures of all of their brushes. They're quite helpful.
The thing I was just going to tack onto that was the one variable obviously is length as well. Like that's obviously the one variable we're discussing. The other variable is obviously the shape of the head, and that I've got to say that varies massively from brand to brand. Like there are some that are slightly longer. The belly isn't as wide or as deep, and the pack feel of the hair isn't as much. Like there are so many nuances when it comes to the shape, size, performance of a brush. And really what it boils down to is just finding a brush, brand and size that performs the best physically possible for you and you feel most comfortable in using. That's really the goal that you should be looking for. It shouldn't be, this manufacturer or this manufacturer or this one. It should just be a brush that you like, feels great, does all the jobs that you want it to. Really, if I was to suggest anything to anybody about trying brush brands, it would be buy a big one and buy a small one. because that will give you a good understanding of both ends of the spectrum of the brushes, and you'll have a much better understanding of what you can do with those two brushes and potentially the range as well. And the handles as well. The handles are something that within brush ranges, it doesn't really, as in like all of Raphael's tend to have a similar sort of handle sort of way, the way that it is. Just find a handle that's very comfortable for you, because that's the direct contact point between you and that brush, and then what transfers onto the model. The handle, believe it or not, as much as brush heads are important, the handle is probably one of the most important things.
It's trying to find that like harmonious relationship with, like, I guess the truth is the brush that's best for someone else isn't going to be best for you.
Correct, yeah.
Purely, even in like a perfect world, you could almost like mix and match like the brush head and the handle, because a handle that you might like might not be on the brush head that you like, and the brush head that you like might not be on the handle that you like, and you might have to make compromises in some departments to get the best like overall result, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, it's just, I'm sorry to relate it to the thing I was talking about earlier, but it is literally like a pen. Like some people like thicker pens as in the handles. Some people, the way that, I mean, people hold pens very differently. Like, and you know, you'll see someone who holds the paintbrush in a certain way, and you might think, oh, that looks quite uncomfortable, but for them it's perfect. If that makes
It's like you get the, who was it? I think it was the army painter brushes come with like the
triangular,
the like triangle handle.
I've not seen that.
So I don't know if it's every brush they do or most
no,
brushes
I think
or
it's
something.
not all of them.
Basically, I remember the first
Oh,
brush.
you mean like the actual handle?
The
It's
handle.
like, it's like
Yeah,
a trapezoid sort
yeah,
of.
it's
yeah,
triangular,
the,
word for
yeah.
that.
the
Yeah.
handle is like a
Yeah.
triangle basically.
So I can't get on with that.
So those brushes, the army painter brushes, were the first brushes I bought that weren't just the Citadel ones that I happened to get in my starter set when I started painting. And
Did we all start with Citadel starter brushes? Just on that
Yes,
point?
yeah, I did,
must have, yeah,
Yeah.
I did,
Yeah.
yeah. I really liked it. Like, I think they're still, I don't know, they've got to still be synthetic, haven't they? I don't know.
The army painter ones. I think they are. Yeah,
I don't know.
I think they might. They like a lot
For the price, I imagine
For the
they
price,
are.
I imagine that they are.
Or
I mean,
like what I'm thinking of them back then. But yeah, I think it was called like the regiment brush. See, they didn't even have sizes like 1, 2, 3
had
or
different
whatever. They
names,
just
yeah.
had names for their brushes. And that was my first actual experience with like a bigger brush, if you like. And so straight away, that kind of, I had the benefit of using a bigger brush quite early on.
Yeah.
One thing I wish that I did when I first got like good brushes, or like actual Kolinsky brushes, and that I would probably encourage is similar to what you just said about getting one big one and one small one. I think I was like, right, yeah, I'll get a 000, a 00, 0, 1, 2 or something like that, and spend all this money and then just be like, I wish I just put all that money into just getting like a 0 and a 4 or something.
Yeah. Or I would say like it depends on the span of a range. So like again, most a 000, 000, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Like that's quite a broad range of brushes. Like so from a size 6 all the way down to a 000, or really in the greater the span of brushes, I would probably increase by 1. Like the greater the span. So what I mean by that is like let's just say there's 8 sizes in the range or 9 sizes in the range, I would pick 2 or 3, like the smallest, the biggest, and maybe one potentially in the middle, like a 1 or a 2 potentially. Yeah, so that should give you a really good barometer of what the range is like, if that makes sense. If you just pick one and you pick the smallest one, you're not going to feel in that the performance of a bigger brush with how sharp the point is on a size 6 or something like that, if you follow me. So
I think it's like the price thing. Obviously, once you go to size 6s,
it does get
big one.
It ramps up. But then, like I'm saying, if the other option that you were already thinking of was to buy a 000, a 000, a 0, a 1, and a 2 or whatever.
Well, part of the perks of just using 2s, by the way, pretty cheap.
Yeah. I'd say my most commonly used brush is probably a 2. Actually, I have like a 4 that I like. I have a 2 that I like.
Size brush, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I have a 4 and a 2 and a 0 that I like.
But when the reason I'm saying pick the biggest and the smallest is because what using the big brush for a period of time does to using the small brushes in the way that you start controlling and using the small brush after using the big brush first, the benefit of improvement of pressure control and brush management that the big brush will do on the little brush is worth buying the big brush, is what I'm trying to point out with that. So the greater the span of brushes, I would probably pick 3, maybe a middle, biggest, smallest. If the range is like 5, or 6 brushes, I'd probably buy like the smallest and the biggest, and then not worry about the middle sizes until maybe you want to spend that extra money, or you get a good feel and you think all these handles are great, the brushes balance really well, the hair performs really well at its biggest size, and I still have a really refined point at a small size. I think that's the best way to dabble with new range. Like when I bought some Raphael because I wanted to know what they're like. I bought 3, so I bought the biggest, the smallest, and the middle. I think it was either a 2 or 3 potentially. I think it was, and it gave me a really good idea of what the handles are like, because obviously handle size does increase as the brush head increases. So you wouldn't have a 000 on a size 6 handle, and vice versa. You wouldn't have a 000 on a size 6 handle the other way around. So I would definitely bear in mind that get used to a handle that feels great at those intermediate sizes, because then that way you know what all the sizes in between will feel like. That's probably my best advice that I could give you for selecting brushes and selecting.
I guess a couple of concluding thoughts on like picking brushes is I would also consider not necessarily just buying what someone else recommends, but buy what's available to you.
Yeah.
Because I pigeonholed myself before with a couple of brush companies that were very, very difficult to get hold of. And the best brush is the brush you have. Do you know what I mean? And also, just quickly to wrap that up as well, I wouldn't fear buying one too much either, because I'm sure you'll agree, I've never bought a Kolinsky Sable brush that was terrible. Like, even if it's not perfect for me and it's not my preference, and fair enough, you might have like a manufacturing defect or whatever, but ruling that out, generally speaking, even if it's not the perfect brush for me, it's not like I'm going to buy it, go, don't like it, and never use it. Like, it will be used.
Big news, tickets are now on sale for the Siege Studios painting classes for 2024. For over 8 years, we've been running in-depth, hands-on classes across the UK, which has allowed us to create the perfect learning environment for improving your painting skills. With a variety of topics available, all our courses are taught by senior artists and feature practical demonstrations in a relaxed environment that welcomes interaction from you, discussions on theory, and an open Q&A session so you can ask that burning question you've had on your mind. You can even bring your models for feedback. To book now and reserve your place before tickets sell out, head over to siegestudios.co.uk/shop. I'll see you on a class soon.
But like, so from both of you then, I think you'll probably both be a bit more experienced on this than me. So we've gone over like the different options for people to buy. In terms of actual brush care, because I think this is where
the problems happen.
This is where the problems happen, and this is where we're alluding to people wasting their money. Because if you don't look after your brushes, it doesn't matter what brushes you have, you're going to ruin them.
Yeah.
Which is what I've done many times over the years. So maybe like, I know we kind of put synthetic ones to the side a little bit, but is there anything that you both have in terms of tips of if someone does have synthetic brushes, how best to look after them?
Synthetics do have a ceiling of where they perform to. And I think that's one of the things that you should really bear in mind, which we've spoken about briefly anyway.
And how long they'll last.
Yeah, and how long they'll last. Like, I think you know, in an out-and-out fight, a Kolinsky is going to win all day long.
I understand this, but I'm saying if so the listeners listen to that first portion, but currently they've got some synthetic brushes. So in terms of looking after the synthetic brushes, not necessarily comparing them to Kolinsky. We'll get to Kolinsky in a minute.
I think that brush care in general is pretty universal. I don't think that it's going to be specific to one or another.
All I will tack onto that is that I found that one of the biggest problems, obviously, with synthetics is the curve at the end, or the hook that happens. And I think that tends to happen because maybe you've used a Kolinsky previously, or maybe you've used a real hair brush previously. It doesn't necessarily have to be Kolinsky. There's all different types of hair that's used in brushes. But I think because real hair tends to have better flex on it, which helps maintain the point, and because synthetic doesn't have as much of a flex because of what it is, I find that if you're a bit gentler with using the synthetic, it kind of mitigates that curving of the end a little bit.
Can prolong the life of the brush a little bit.
It's the heavy use that you get used to because of hair brushes, that when you use synthetics, I find that if you're being heavier with them, or how heavy you would be as in the pressure and the amount of the way you're using it, I find that that's what starts to breed that hook a lot quicker. I think if you realize that it doesn't have the same behavioral characteristics and flex that hair does, what you can then do is go, right, if I'm just gently using the brush in general, what that means is that I will hopefully not get a hook as quick as it will happen just because of the nature of the material. But if you're a bit gentle with using it, you should prolong the life of that synthetic. And that's before we talk about any other methods of brush care, which we'll go into.
So it could be, I think, not even like, oh, you've used real hair previously and now you're used to it and you're applying that same pressure to the synthetic. I think even if you've just started on synthetics, you could even be down to like
just being heavy-handed.
You're mimicking what you see in your tutorials and things, right? Because it's like you're copying what whoever's teaching you how to paint is doing, and maybe they're not mentioning the fact that they have a Kolinsky brush and they treat it this way because X, Y, and Z. And if you treat your brush like that, it's gonna damage it a bit more. So yeah, kind of handy to know, I think.
Yeah, I think something important, I guess, to rule out is like, I don't want to assume any like knowledge level from any of the listeners, like whether you're experienced or not. Like that's totally fine. You don't know what you know until you're told it. Like I guess if there's a few like fundamental rules that regardless of whether you're using a Kolinsky brush or a synthetic brush, whatever brush you're using, some real like do not do's, which would be do not leave your brush in the water pot, like just sat there, standing, swinging around, because that's going to crush the tip. Do not, as much as you can, try not to get paint into the ferrule. So that's the metal part, base of the brush. Because if you can't see it, but there is hair retreated in there quite deep down. And when you get debris and paint drying up, it will soak in and go into what is underneath that metal. You can't see it happening. But paint is going to soak up in there if you're getting it all the way down to the bottom, and it's going to dry out in there. You have no way of cleaning it. And then that's going to have this sort of knock-on effect of the brushes further up not being able to angle themselves back in.
One of the things that is really, really important, and the truth about brushes in general really is that hair that's in the ferrule, what happens is any moisture, this is before we talk about paint, any moisture, the hair that's compacted in the ferrule is effectively loose, okay, as in those hairs are next to each other, okay? Now, when any hair gets wet, and if you've got long hair and you don't, you wet your hair, you don't brush it or whatever, blah, blah, it sticks and mats together. And the problem with the hair that's in that ferrule is that the moisture has nowhere to go. So it collects in there, causes that hair in the ferrule to mat together, and you can't separate it or pull those hairs apart because it's shrouded in the ferrule. What happens is that actually completely counteracts the crimp, which puts pressure on the brush head, which creates the lovely shaped head that brushes have. So effectively, the reason why a lot of brushes become umbrellas is because the hair in the ferrule is matted. It's the whole entire flex and spring of the head that is affected, and that's what causes the hair to splay out into that umbrella kind of like shape. So you talk about not getting paint in the ferrule. Most paint that we use in miniatures is acrylic, which is plastic. So you imagine when that acrylic paint dries, it dries into plastic, which has got a lot of elasticity, but it also has a lot of tension on what it sticks to. So it's going to even increase that even more so.
And you can see this, like if you've ever had a brush that you like maybe you forgot about and it's like dried up with acrylic on the tip, you just end up with just one solid brick,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I think, and that's the thing. Like, I would always advocate and recommend when you're using brushes you really care about to apply the 2/3 rule. And the 2/3 rule is that the front 2/3 of the brush is the fun zone, and the rear third that's next to the ferrule is the red zone. You don't go there. You don't put reds. And we've all done it. We've all got our lovely brand new brush and gone put it in the paint pot. Oh crap!
Do you know what as well? I had like a bit of like a realization, because I'd always done that and I'd kind of thought of it as 2/3 or whatever. But it's like, you really don't need to go, like, you don't need to go that far. Like, you can put like hardly any. I think I was watching a tutorial. It might have been like a Rich Gray tutorial or something. And when he's like going into the palette, he's hardly putting any paint on the brush at all, because you don't need to like cake it in.
What part of the brush do you put the paint on the model with?
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't need
the slight like sort of contrarian view to that is obviously the belly of the brush is there to serve the purpose of to be a reservoir. However, if you look at most brush shapes, that reservoir stops at that final third, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like, I know I get joking and say fun zone and red zone, whatever, blah blah. But it's I say it in that way to hopefully make sure that you realise that area, that's not where paint should be. Now, the only reason why one thing that I learned in the last probably like 5-6 years or so was actually just, and this is obviously in part through making brushes and doing that, is actually just brush storage in general after use. And I think that's something that is hugely overlooked by people. I used to be there in the past when I was a lot younger. I used to have like a jam jar or something on the table. My brushes were stuck in there, blah, blah, vertically, brush heads upwards, etc. And you can't help it. You finish painting, you wash your brush off, you dry it a little bit, whatever, and then you put it back in your jam jar. But the problem is again, visually, you don't seal that moisture in the brush head that's permeating into the ferrule, creating that matting of the hair that's compacted in the ferrule. So one thing that I immediately, when that light bulb happened, the one thing that immediately for me that was like, right, okay, when I finish using a paintbrush, I'll do the same thing, wash it out, make sure there's no paint or anything in the brush, and then I lay it down flat on my desk with the head just over the edge of my desk. So I know that any moisture isn't going to recede or permeate into the ferrule. It's just the brush head is just going to dry out flat. The even better thing to potentially do is have your brushes hanging, but in the opposite direction with your brush heads pointing. You can get these elaborate brush hanging things for your desk or whatever. If you want that, that's fine.
Bit of blue tack,
yeah, bit of blue tack, yeah, whatever. But I just lay them flat on the desk with the brush head just overhanging the edge of the table, and then that way for me it means that like I know that brush has been used, it's drying. The only brushes I've got with the heads up with the protective caps on are all my dry or brand new brushes or spare brushes that haven't had any water near them at all whatsoever. So I think that paint isn't just the enemy. I think water is as well. And I think if you don't properly dry out the brush, and when I say properly dry, I don't mean like get it super, super, super dry. Just, use paper towel or use like an old rag or something just to get as much moisture out of the brush as possible. You're just going to be helping to protect that brush. And I think the last thing I'll tack onto that is when you do finish with a brush, just repoint it, because by repointing it, it will mean that brush is consistently being taught by you that is the shape that it needs to retain, if that makes sense. If you just leave it wet and with loose hairs and straggly hairs everywhere, that spring memory that the brush has got can start to diminish as well. So like by repointing it every time you've used, after you finish with it, so it's left to dry. I know a lot of people say about brush licking or whatever, and unfortunately, yes, I do that, But what I would say is that when I've washed the brush out properly, I'll literally just repoint it, and then it goes on the edge of the table, if that makes sense. And then
if you don't want to lick the brush,
we're not encouraging you to lick the brush.
Hang on, I don't do that. I have a bit of kitchen paper that is damp, wet, and I just roll the brush on that. And what is really important, this is something that nobody talks about, and I don't know why. Again, there's no judgment on the user, because if you don't know what you don't know. Brushes are designed to always work in a pulling motion towards. You're always painting, pulling away, so the tip is always staying pointed. If you've got the tip of the brush, you don't want to be pushing or stabbing at anything you're painting.
I will only throw in the caveat of a push stroke, but you use the brush on its side and you're still.
That's a bit different because you're basically doing what I'm talking about. Just you're making your hand work around it. You don't want to be pushing the bristles forwards. So when you're repointing, always pulling, and if you can, twisting as well, because that will help you get that nice sharp point on the tip.
I've got a question, because I don't know if this is just a me thing or if this is like something that happens to everyone, but the little caps, the little like plastic caps on the brushes, I can't keep hold of one of them for longer than like 2 days.
Admittedly, it doesn't help that they are completely transparent. I give you that,
but they just vanish. I don't know if do they like just disappear? Do they like just sort of disintegrate?
It goes into the same realm as like a guitar pick.
It's got brush protector borrowers by the sounds of it.
I cannot keep one to save my life, but I also can't find is there things you can buy as like brush caps, or can you buy those anywhere on their own? I can't find them anywhere.
They are.
You think you're struggling with dropper bottles?
They are super hard to find in my experience. So there's all manner of different material versions of those. You've got the plastic ones which crack, which aren't the best. What you really want are more rubberized ones, because then it's
like a different kind of plastic.
Yeah, it is. It's like a softer, but it's still strong, but it bends a little bit and has a bit more of play in it. I have got a hack which I can actually say.
Okay.
So, I said about the dental cleaners for your airbrush needle, nozzle and end cap.
Oh, they have them.
They have in there, they have one of those in each pack. So every time you buy one of those packs for
like
cleaning your
a cap.
airbrush,
It's like a cap
it's
travel
a
cap
cap. It's a
thing.
cap that goes on the thing that you use. Obviously,
It won't be any good for your size 4s and whatever.
No, it won't. But you can get you can get 000s up to like zeros in them quite nicely.
Yeah.
So that is a little bit of
a good little hack.
He's really chuffed with that. Look at him.
a mid pod hack. There you go.
Yeah.
But for the bigger ones, I would probably recommend just finding some straws that are more rubberized than plastic,
And then cutting them up.
Yeah, that's what I'd probably recommend. Or you could find some
rubberized straws. Should be easy to find.
It'll be damn sight easier to find than pre-cut brush protectors that are made out of material.
Why is no one selling them?
Yeah.
Or like really good ones. Like make like specific good ones.
I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have this problem. I just don't lose them. Like,
I don't lose mine, but yeah.
there you go.
Right, well,
It sounds like a you problem.
We can't all be perfect.
It might be a Joe problem,
But
but yeah.
leave a comment if you also lose them. Because I lose them all the time.
This is the
Do you know what I will
next
say though? When my brush gets retired, should we say, to serve its second life as a base coating brush and then its third life as a glue brush and so on,
Yeah.
I will take the cap off because it doesn't need to keep its point anymore. And I have a little surplus stockpile of
I've got a little.
So you acknowledge. Oh, so you've got some.
Well, I've never used them.
got some
I've got
spares.
I've got a pot of a few.
You got some spares,
Do you want the hookup?
That's what Joe's really angling at. Yeah.
You got stock.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, if you can find a good replacement for those, then they're quite good. But yeah.
Just final thing then, in terms of brush care,
Mhm.
actually cleaning your brush soap and so on. What's everyone's like process?
I think the most important thing with all of this is it's like that attitude of like, you don't need to tidy your room every week if you just keep your room tidy. Like, do you get what I mean? So if you're looking after your brushes like nicely, it doesn't take a lot of time. Like, it takes so much less time to just look after your brush now than to spend like 4 hours at the end of the month like cleaning all of your brushes out of your soap.
I will just tack on to that no matter some paints and no matter how well you do that quick clean as you're using it, that does accumulate over time.
I agree with that.
You do need to
I
get
do
to a
agree with
point where it's like, I need to sit here specifically cleaning X amount of brushes that do need a bit of a rejuvenate.
That I agree with, but just getting ahead of that, like to prolong that and to push that off and make it as infrequent as possible, I would say the most important thing is to look after your brush like while you're using it, keep them clean, keep the tips repointed, don't let paint get into the ferrule. And then you're not going to find that you have to clean your brushes that often. I think when I first started out, I always thought, I'm going to have to use like my brush soap at like the end of every session. I don't find that's actually really necessary at all.
I think that's actually, again, the other thing is that brush soap, if you use too much of it, and I've seen people put brush soap in the ferrule, near the ferrule, etc., that when soap dries, it goes to that hard material.
Waxy,
it's like waxy. That will mat hair in the ferrule so easily as well. So you actually need to be, even though you think you're cleaning them, doing a really great job putting that everywhere, like you're actually probably causing damage to them as well. So like being refined and reserved with the cleaning as well is just as important. A little thing, we're going to be chucking out hacks left, right, and center here, but like another thing that I definitely suggest that you do is don't be fooled into thinking you need to use X for cleaning. Like if you're using Kolinsky's, it's hair. You can just use soap, shampoo. You can use that stuff as well because and even hair conditioner can work on them as well. Like you can use all those things that you would use on your hair, on your brushes, and it will still help massively.
I find it really amusing that people baby their Kolinsky brushes. They really want to be careful with it. And then it comes to cleaning, they're going like all over the place with the soap. Like they're going to town, they're getting their fingers in there, like ripping it apart, like pulling hairs out. Like just you need to have the same care and attention to them as you would with the paint.
One thing I will say is that depending on what you use them for, some paints, specifically metallics, and that they tend to cause more damage to a brush. Metallics and washes and inks as well tend to cause quite a lot of damage to brush heads. One thing that you can do is you can just get a shot glass or a cup or glass or something, put a little bit thinner or cleaner from your airbrush in it, and just roll your brush in that. That will break down any clumps or nodules of paint that have stuck mid-hair or whatever, blah, blah. Because the problem with a clump of paint, a tiny bit of paint drying in the center of a hair strand, is it weakens and causes pressure around that hair, makes it brittle, and then that hair snaps. So what you want to do is obviously just, again, part of my kind of like deep clean when it comes to brushes, if I do that at the end of a month or whenever, is I'll literally put them all in thinner or cleaner for a couple of seconds, 10, 15 seconds, and give them a swill in that, thoroughly rinse them out, and then brush soap and conditioner them, because it just helps break down any paint that is stuck on the hairs, if that makes sense. So yeah, but if you're going to do that, thinner and cleaner is very aggressive to hair, and it can dry out the head quite quickly, the hair. You need to recondition it and bring it back to like a satiny kind of sheen, and is what you're kind of looking for on the hair.
If you're enjoying the show and you want to get even more painting tips and techniques from us here at Siege, head over to our Patreon. With the Siege Studios Patreon, you'll gain access to a catalogue of over 250 PDF and video tutorials covering a variety of techniques, from our foundation tutorials to full character masterclasses and much more. We also have a tier just for you podcast listeners to help support the show. So if you want to take your paintings to the next step and make the most of your hobby time, head over to patreon.com/Siege Studios. Question of the week time. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions for question of the week. If you have a question that you would like us to answer on the podcast, please leave it in the comments down below on YouTube. Or if you are listening on any of the audio platforms, you can head on over to the YouTube video, or you can fire us a DM on Instagram, either at Siege Studios or at Paint Perspective Podcast. This week, Jerome6870 says, "Great podcast as always, chaps. I have a question for you. If you were doing a big centerpiece character like a Primarch for a Legion with a colored metallic scheme like Alpha Legion, how would you go about doing the armor to push it further than the rest of your dudes?"
Well, you've got some experience along this line fairly recently. Not a Primarch, but you had to do some metallic red armor, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I painted an Araman recently for Siege. But it was in the alternative pre-heresy metallic red color scheme.
Yeah. So what was your like kind of planning process on that?
Panic attack, some procrastination. No.
So I am doing the right things. Oh, okay, never mind.
So if you're doing, I haven't got a massive amount of experience with colored metallic schemes. And by that, I mean like doing lots of different colors. But generally what I found with the best way to approach it is to paint it as if it were just a neutral, like for example, silver, just metallic color, paint it fully, and then go on with a clear product. If you're using just brushes, I think that I haven't used them, but I believe contrast paints are good for that. Or if you have got an airbrush, airbrushing contrast paints, or airbrushing a transparent ink, or airbrushing Tamiya do some clear products. I'm sure there's other paint manufacturers that do clear paint products. Because they're transparent, they are perfect for metallics because you see that shiny metallic flake. But unlike mixing colors with metallics, because I guess instinctively you think, well, why don't I just mix red with silver and it'll make metallic silver? It doesn't really have the same sort of finish and the same sort of shine. And if you think about like a car, something that's like colored and metallic, even though that has got like the metallic fleck mixed in with how it's painted, I understand that's how they're sprayed. But if you look at it, it looks like it's almost like underneath. It's got that sort of depth to it. In terms of pushing it further, I would say that I think the colored, for me, the colored stage always comes at the end. So it's just down to how much you're pushing paint. This goes down to just painting metallic schemes in general. I think that the colored part is kind of almost irrelevant in this. I think it shares the same problem.
It's just a filter.
Yeah,
it's just
for
a filter. You should be shading it and doing all your highlight stages and everything on the metallics, and then overlaying the color. That's what.
And that's not to say that you couldn't like do a mixture of that and still paint after the fact. I'm sure you can. And if your workflow works for you and you get good results, then go for it. I think it's the problem that you have with metallic schemes in general is like how I think a lot of people struggle with how do I push the highlights or push the contrast with, even if you're doing what are some like metallic color schemes that you normally see, like even with like custodians or something like that.
Grey Knights or something.
Grey Knights, exactly.
With that blue hue.
I think people struggle a lot with like metallic paint schemes and pushing the contrast, and I did for a long time. But if you look at most ranges of metallic paints, there will be like brighter silvers and darker silvers and lighter golds, and you can mix silvers into your golds to get them brighter. And especially when you start using like normal acrylics to start adding some shading rather than just using washes, you can actually push the contrast quite a lot. And when you start like panel lining and things like that, that will really make the metallic shine. But I do think that lighting is really important as well, because having like a bright light on the model so that you can see what the actual paint is rather than what is just sort of pigment like reflecting light back at you. I really, really must stress that painting sharply, I think, is really, really important on metallics, even compared to just like colored objects. Because if you look at something metallic in real life, it does have it's just that sharpness, that crispness that like makes it look like real reflecting light, if you get what I mean.
You can almost get away on metallics. You can almost get away with like starker changes between the colors if you're sharp.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's how the reflections and things look.
Yeah. And I think you can get away with like really big jumps in contrast as well. Like you can have a pretty dark silver and a very, very bright, like almost white silver. If it's sharp enough, it will look right. But I guess to the point of this comment is whatever you're doing for your army, like adding an additional glaze of highlight if you want to get a bit fancy with it, or even just adding an extra stage of like panel lining before you're introducing color, I think will make the model have a lot more contrast and it will stand out a lot more.
Yeah.
Hobby hack. This is our little closing weekly segment where we share a little hobby hack with you. James has already shared a couple through the episode, but we're here for the people with our routine weekly segments.
Not being stingy. We'll still give one at the end.
Still deliver at the end.
3 for the price of 1.
Yeah, there you go. James, I've written this one down just for you because I know that this is one you've been talking about this week.
Yep.
Which is the use of guitar strings.
I've literally just this morning been asked by James if I still play guitar much.
Is he outsourcing to you now as well? He had this conversation with me yesterday. So you're having separate conversations with us, like looking for.
I said just read the hack first because people don't.
Well,
know.
James has got the hack. So.
Okay.
I've got a lot of tanks, all right, okay, and I need a lot of whip aerials. So unfortunately, I no longer play guitar. Been a long time, and I don't have any strings on any of my guitars that are in the loft anymore. So I couldn't even steal those. But when you buy guitar strings, the lead part that you put through the machine head at the top of the guitar has a lovely bit that's perfect for an aerial on a tank, and it has where the coil starts. It's the perfect grounding part that when you see on military sort of like aerials and stuff, they have that thicker part at the bottom, and they're perfect for representing aerials on tanks and stuff. So if you do have loads of spare guitar strings,
so basically James was asking if he could have my clip-ins.
Yeah.
So when you change
the strings on your guitar, the end
I
parts,
said, why don't you just buy a pack of guitar strings?
Exactly.
Because you can.
Guitar strings are pretty, especially in the hobby miniature painting hobby world. Guitar strings are like £7 for a pack.
No,
especially you could just get the cheapest ones you want.
Yeah, I could theoretically.
Not bothered about quality.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
When I've got 2 people that play guitar in the office, it makes perfect sense. That means that's double whip aerials from do you know what I mean? So
I was going to say as well with this though, like I know a lot of people use the thicker guitar strings for like cables, like bits on bass, little greeblies, like extra, the cables that go between like the arm and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So for that. But
good little hobby hack. If you didn't know, you can just buy packs of guitar strings like on.
You don't need to pester your friends who play guitar.
Pester your friends. Pester friends.
Well, guitar strings are pretty cheap in the grand scheme of things, and you'll get 6 of them in a pack, and they're pretty long, like 32
varying
inches
sizes
or so.
as well.
Varying thicknesses. So buy yourself a pack of guitar strings. There you go.
Yeah, if you want something a bit thicker, you just go for like whatever the mental
bass size
death metal guitar strings are.
10 to 64.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Then got a lot of varying sizes there.
There you go. Well, thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode of Paint Perspective. If you want to support the show, you can do so in a number of ways, but mainly is our Patreon. If you head over to the Siege Studios Patreon, you'll find that there is a tier just for you podcast listeners. And over there, you'll gain access to an exclusive members area on our Discord. You can chat with the hosts, and occasionally we do a little hobby hangout as well. Thank you, everyone. We'll catch you next week.